What's good, everybody? My name is Sway, and we're back talking NFL Pick'ems Week 10. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of my picks from this past Sunday, and then I'm going to let you know who my picks are for this upcoming week. And let's see if I was able to beat my old record of 12-2. Starting off with the Halloween game, Jets and Texans. I did pick the Jets to win. It wasn't looking pretty at the beginning of the game or even the first half, but they figured it out and got the win in the end. Next up, Bills and Dolphins. I almost had a heart attack. Thank God Tyler Bass came through in the end and kicked a 61-yard field goal to win it, and that was a big win against a divisional opponent. Moving on to the Broncos and Ravens. I really thought this game was going to be a little bit more competitive, but the Ravens were just too much and they ended up blowing out the Broncos in the end. Next up, Bengals and Raiders. Raiders are just not a good team. We know that. The Bengals ended up blowing them out, and they got a big game coming up tonight against Baltimore, and they really need it if they want to stay in the playoff mix. Moving on to the Patriots and Titans. We know both teams aren't very good right now, but the Patriots ended up sending this game into overtime because Drake May made a crazy play at the end of the fourth quarter, but the Titans ended up pulling it off in the end. Next up, Saints and Panthers. I wanted to pick the Panthers so bad last week when I was making my picks, but I ended up rolling with the Saints because Derek Carr was in, but Chris Olave ended up leaving the game with a concussion, and that really hurt. The Panthers ended up pulling it off in the end by 1 point. Moving on to the Falcons and Cowboys. The Cowboys are just a disaster right now. Dak Prescott's going to be out for at least a month. CeeDee Lamb might miss some time with a shoulder injury, and they just told Zeke Elliott to stay home this past week and didn't really give any excuses as to why. He's just probably complaining that he's not getting enough playing time, but their organization's on a downhill right now, and Mike McCarthy's probably going to get fired at the end of the season. Moving on to the Chargers and Browns. I guess the Browns were a one-week wonder. They looked good against Baltimore, and then they just really shit the bed against the Chargers this past week, and the Chargers ended up blowing them out. Moving on to Washington and New York. Washington looked good in the first half. They went up 21-7. They did let the Giants come back towards the end, but they ended up pulling off the win. Similar situation with the Eagles and Jaguars. The Eagles were dominating that game, and they just kind of let up and let the Jaguars back in the game, and they actually had a chance to win it in the fourth quarter, but the Eagles had a nice interception in the end zone, and they ended up with the win. Moving on to the Bears and Cardinals. The Bears offense still doesn't look good. They need to figure something out quick if they even want to think about getting into the playoffs. As far as the Cardinals go, they ran all over the Bears defense this week. They had over 200 yards rushing. Kyler Murray didn't have to throw that much, only 150 yards, but they're leading their division right now, and that's all that matters. Moving on to the Rams and Seahawks. The Seahawks ended up sending this game into overtime at the end of the fourth quarter. Jackson Smith-Njigba had a crazy game. He had almost 200 yards receiving, but it wasn't enough. The Rams ended up pulling it off in overtime. Demarcus Robinson with a crazy one-handed catch that got the job done. Moving on to the Lions and Packers. This game was ugly. It was raining hard all game. Jordan Love didn't do very well. He threw a pick six. The Lions did what they had to do to get the win, and they look like the best team in the league right now, in my opinion. Moving on to the Sunday night game, Colts and Vikings. Joe Flacco didn't look good at all this game. I don't know if it had to do with the offensive play calling or because the Vikings have a really good defense, or maybe it was a little bit of both, but in his previous two starts, he looked really good, and I just hope he keeps up this trend next week because he's playing my Bills. And as far as the Vikings go, they had a good game overall. Sam Darnold almost 300 yards passing, Justin Jefferson over 100 yards receiving, and they're back in the win column. Moving on to the Monday night game, Bucks and Chiefs. I really thought the Bucks should have went for two for the win at the end of the game, but they decided to play for overtime, and the Chiefs did what they had to do to get it done. So overall this week, I went 12-3. Still didn't beat my previous record of 12-2, but I came close, and this past month, I've done pretty well. I've had 3 weeks with 12 wins and 1 with 11, so I'm hoping this is the week where I can get at least 13. Starting off with the Thursday night game, Bengals and Ravens. I'm going to take the Bengals in a close one. I'm hoping that we see a repeat of the first game where they put up almost 80 points, but I think the Ravens get it done in the end. Moving on to the Sunday games, first up, my Bills against the Colts. I think this game's going to be a lot closer than people think. The Colts are at home. We might be without Keon Coleman, but Amari Cooper is supposed to be back. I just think if the Colts are going to beat us, they need to look at what Miami did to us this past week, and Jonathan Taylor needs to have a big game in order for them to win. Moving on to the Bucks and Niners, I'm going to take the Niners. They're getting McCaffrey back for the first time this season. The Bucks are still short-manned with their 2 receivers out, so I got the Niners winning this one. Moving on to the Falcons and Saints. The Saints just aren't a good team right now. Derek Carr is not looking good. Chris Olave is probably going to be out this week. I know it is a divisional game going up against the Falcons, but I got the Falcons to win in the end. Moving on to the Broncos and Chiefs. I want to pick Denver this game, but the Chiefs are still at home and Denver's still an up-and-coming team, so I'm going to take the Chiefs in this one. Moving on to what should be the game of the week, Pittsburgh against Washington. I'm going to take Washington. They're at home. I know Pittsburgh's coming off a bye week and they just traded for Preston Smith and Mike Williams. I'm not too sure if both of them are playing this week, but I'm going to take Washington and probably what's going to go into overtime. Moving on to the Vikings and Jaguars. The Vikings should win this game pretty easily. I just heard that Trevor Lawrence is probably not going to play, which I don't even know who their backup is at this point, but they're not a very good team right now, and the Vikings have a really good defense, and I'm excited for that because I have them on my fantasy team. Next up, Patriots and Bears. This game might be a little more tricky than people think. I know the Patriots aren't very good, but the Bears' offense isn't very good right now either, so I am going to take the Bears. They're back at home, and I think they finally figure it out this week. Next up, Eagles and Cowboys. Like I said earlier, the Cowboys are just not a good team right now. Dak Prescott's out. CeeDee Lamb might be out, but even if he plays, I'm going to take the Eagles in this one. Next up, Titans and Chargers. We know the Titans aren't a very good team right now. The Chargers just put a beat down at Cleveland, and I think they're going to win pretty easily. Next up, Jets and Cardinals. This game should also be a pretty good game. I am going to take the Jets in a close one, but obviously I'm hoping that Arizona can pull it out. Moving on to the Sunday night game, Lions and Texans. The Texans are going to be without Nico Collins again, so I got the Lions winning this one pretty easily. And the Monday night game of the week, Dolphins and Rams. This game should be pretty good. I got the Rams winning this one. They are at home, and I just think their run defense is a lot better than ours, so I think they'll figure out a way to get it done. Those are going to be my picks for the week. Let me just give you a quick recap on who I picked. Ravens, Panthers, Bills, Niners, Falcons, Chiefs, Washington, Vikings, Bears, Eagles, Chargers, Jets, Lions, and Rams. There are 4 teams on a bye this week: Browns, Packers, Raiders, and Seahawks. That only leaves me with 14 games to try and do better than my 12-2 record. So maybe I'll go 13-1 this week. We'll see what happens, but screw up, Sway here. Completely forgot the Germany game. I'm going to take the Panthers in this one. I wanted to pick them last week. I decided not to, and it came back to bite me in the end. But good luck to you guys and your team this week, except for the Colts. The hell with you guys, and go Bills.